Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here. We're going to go ahead and get started for today's Title IX committee meeting. So thank you all for being here. I'm sure you all have an agenda in front of you, and we're actually going to pivot from that agenda, and we're going to go into subcommittees. I know a couple people have to leave early, so I wanted to go ahead into subcommittees to talk about a couple of things. So we have raise your hand if you're on the education subcommittee. Okay, so education subcommittee, I'm not sure how large that room is back there. Julie, do you think it'll be big enough there? Okay, so education subcommittee, you're going to gather in this back room here, and I'll come by with more information. Who is on the resources subcommittee? Okay, well, resources subcommittee, you all can have this room here because you will need the screen for those discussions. And then the rest of you all, hand for the policy subcommittee? Okay, all right. So the policy subcommittee can stay right here. And so we'll do the subcommittees for about 30 minutes or so, and then I'll be swinging around to see what updates are. But I'll provide you all with some tasks once we break out into our different sessions, okay? Thank you.
I'm pretty much living out of my heart.
What time are you leaving here?
I got everything.
What time are you leaving here?
To go to the hotel.
Yeah.
Guess we should leave about 5 or 5.
Yeah.
What you think?
Yeah, well, I have to stop the office.
Yeah. I don't know what the parking situation. recent movie.
Yeah, so they sold the house.
Clint Eastwood
It's
directed
under,
it.
well, it's under contract, I guess. They close on
He just looked good. I didn't see it.
March.
He just looked good.
No, she
You
just
know,
found a job down here, but
see
she
it,
just
but
like was
it's
like
demeanor
done, had to get out.
Everything, you just,
So yeah, but dad for the in the meantime is
yeah, I know.
lonely.
Well, that's my question.
I'm like,
Did
Dad,
he
I'm going to
or did we hear that this guy was the one who was accused?
Right.
And then in our minds, he just,
I didn't think of it. He's kind of, he is. He just is like,
We have to
I
find
don't know.
somebody
Like I
sure
said,
that
he's just like,
we
can
have
you
our
come
guy.
in? I'm like, and he also likes to go to bed at like 7:30 at night.
who's the actual bomber?
Yeah, they did. His name was Eric Robert Rudolph. And he also found 3 abortions.
Oh, he's the guy that hid out in the mountains
In Murphy.
forever and they finally found him after
In
years.
Murphy.
Oh,
I took
I didn't know
my,
he was the Atlanta bomber.
yep.
Are you here? Ted Kaczynski was another one who got
Yeah, so I took my Girl Scout troop for a weekend. One of the parents.
All right, I think this is all of our groups reconvened at this point.
So we were trying really hard not to let the girls know
Yeah.
that he was there. And getting ready and I gotta figure this out.
So I'm going to take the next 5 to 10 minutes to just quickly debrief about what each subcommittee was tasked to do and some general ideas that came out of those subcommittee discussions, all right? So I'll go ahead and start with the Education Subcommittee. Anyone from there want to report back about?
Report out. Jarrell asked us to look at, they want to have a training for the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders at Rolling Rice. You wanna tell why we're having that training, Jarrell?
Yes, that's fine. Do I want? Yes, so we're having a training, sorry, it's late. We're having a training at Rolling Rice Middle School to work on the aspect of prevention and remedying in regards to the most recent employee arrest. Particularly, that's why it's Rolling Rice Middle School. So we want to provide the students there an opportunity to learn about certain policies, certain behaviors that they should be on the lookout, making sure that they're knowledgeable about how to report, to make sure that we're working on remedying and prevention. So that's what this is about.
So we really thought that this was a great opportunity for us to develop communities, not just at Rolling Rice, but other middle schools. We talked about giving the parents the option to opt out of it. And by doing that, making sure that we have a very clear presentation that parents can screen beforehand to see what the topics are going to be. And also providing some talking points for parents. And then we talked a little bit about kind of relaunching Ethics and Say Something and talking about trusted adults in school, and then using some of the materials we already have to cover the rest of the topics. And then at the end to have an exit ticket, so kids, if there was something that the kids want discussed that there was not discussed, that they could pick up that exit ticket and write it down and give it to their teacher who would then hand it in to us. So we're going to meet, try to meet again very quickly to come up with some ways to develop this training, because we know that 30 minutes with middle schoolers needs to be somewhat entertaining in different modes of learning, or we're going to not pay attention at all. So we're going to get together and see if we can find a mixture of videos and talking so that we're not just up there for 30 minutes with a PowerPoint.
And you all thought at this point it would still be best to do in the larger group setting, or?
I think that we thought, so yes, so we would love to do a large group session so that the information gets to all kids. But then do some follow-up sessions where if parents are interested in their kids attending, then they can, and they have more questions or want more information, they can also do that.
All right, well, thank you. Good work there. So the next policy subcommittee, just want to briefly talk about what you reviewed and
Yeah, it's, we basically looked at the new regulations, the proposed regulations. These aren't actual regulations, but the proposed regulations from the Department of Education surrounding Title IX, and took a look at our policy proposal and wanted to see, were there areas where we might need to revisit, might need to amplify, might need to dial back. I think overall, we felt pretty good about where we ended up. I think we look at the Department of Education regulations as more of a floor, and we don't want to be on the floor. We want to be above the floor.
Also, given that we are not gonna sit on the floor, we discussed the possibility of, releasing an interim policy and procedures, if the Department of Education doesn't finalize these within the next 30 days or so that we are doing something sooner rather than later. And then if something changes when the regulations are finalized, we'll have the freedom to make corrections.
Yeah, and so with those Title IX regulations, I know we talked about it maybe a meeting or 2 meetings ago. But we're still just waiting for them to get through those final logistics of how an agency puts out regulations. So the whole entire Title IX world is waiting for those. So of course, being part of that, that's where we are. So we're just waiting for those updates, but also being in mind in the interim, is there anything that we could be sending out, putting out as we're waiting instead? So the last group was the resources subcommittee. You all want to share with what you talked about there?
Can we do it? So we did a deep dive into our survey draft, and so we've identified a couple of pieces that we made some determinations on, at least for our subcommittee. We want to put the demographic pieces at the bottom that ask about your particular school grade. For gender, we do have a question for our friends at Rape Crisis Center on how we want to identify gender, because we have male, female, and then we talked about, do we want to have an other or a prefer not to report, but how do we want to be succinct in that? Race and ethnicity, we've got those, and we want to have one at the bottom of prefer not to report. And then we went through the survey questions and did a little bit of wordsmithing, but also trying to stay very brief. We're thinking about this as really more of a, as we talked about, kind of a temperature gauge, really getting a baseline, and then most likely using this information to circle back through and ask more specific and detailed information at a later time. But mostly asking about the perception, or I feel safe, staff treats me with respect kind of thing, and then going into things that I observe as a middle or high school kid. And it includes pieces of, cyber or digital, like social media approaches. It also includes observing harassment or bullying or name calling or making fun of other students based on disability, based on appearance, whether that's size, based on gender, based on sexual orientation, race, socioeconomic status, which we were going to redefine as, based on how much money their family has, kind of thing, religious beliefs, and then it goes into whether I've participated in those, and those are briefer. If I've participated in verbal bullying, teasing, rumor spreading, or harassment, or physical intimidation, and then goes even further to use like digital resources. And then we kind of do a little shift and have kind of more of a perception. If I was being bullied or harassed, would I go to school staff? And it kind of lists out different ones for help. If I talk, well, do I feel supported? Yes or no? Is there a form or procedure I should be using? Yes or no? And then it goes into, where do we think these things are more likely to occur? Is it happening in the classroom? Is it happening off campus? Is it happening more in, hallways, lunchroom, bus stop kind of thing? And then we moved into bystander. And if we, whether we've observed this from bystander behavior, or what we think, if we haven't observed it, what do we think is going to happen? And then it's, that bystanders will intervene, or they're likely to push it to stop, or, and it goes into different pieces of that. And the last one is really what we were going to reword number 11, but when a student's being bullied or harassed, what do we think is really going to be the outcome in these particular scenarios? So when you tell the person that's bullying to stop, does it help? Is it so-so, or is it effective or not? laugh it off? Does that help? You know, fight back with returning insults or threatening. Does that help? Is it so-so? Asking for advice or telling a staff member or a parent.
Okay.
So we feel like we've got some edits ready to make, and we're ready to probably give you something in the next day or so.
Okay, good. So yes, that was the next. So when it comes to the survey, the next step would be, once we get the actual draft of the survey with all those edits and considerations that the subcommittee made today, it would then be provided to the entire Title IX committee for review, and then it would go to the board from there. So that would be the next step with the survey process.
So our thoughts are also on making sure that we want to make sure it can only be taken once. It can only be taken by current students, middle or high school, and it'll come through their NHCS email address.
Okay.
But then their results will be anonymous, so we would not track those. It wouldn't collect their name or any of that information. And so then it's more statistically relevant because we know it's just our students and they
Just
only
current
are taking
students.
it one time.
Mhm.
So I think we'll have to work through some of those pieces. Was there anything else, Dawn, or Amy, or anything else?
I just was gonna share from the resources subcommittee, I did bring a lot of the resources that we were using for community forums that are out on the table. All of those are either copied, where you can take as many as you might want to take and share. They're also not, there are things that can be reproduced, they're not copyrighted in any way, shape, or form. Some of the Mama Bear Effect, those Mama Bear Effect little, kind of like placards, you can take a supply of those, and you can certainly be back in touch with us, because we've got thousands of those at the Carousel Center in anticipation for us working together as a community to do a more unified effort in how we're addressing rocking the talk, is what they call it in Mama Bear Effect, and that's for from day one, for little ones, grade school, teenagers, adolescents, as well as families, how families can have that conversation. So there are placards over there for you to help yourself and be able to utilize.
Thank you.
So
and
I just had a quick question. I have one small concern. Can we guarantee that this survey will be anonymous? My concern is what happens if the school system, we're reading these results, and then we identify criminal behavior.
So we talked about the anonymity. We aren't going to be able to find out the answers because of the way it's going to be set up through the Google survey or the Google form. Now we did include language in, we've included some language in like Ethics 360 or the reporting of a concern, which is similar to say something that if you have something that needs to be reported, we're asking that they would share it. There's not a place on here because it's really choices. It's not a leaving, a fill in the blank
No
to
open-ended.
report something.
Yeah, there's nothing that I saw in the survey that we're using as a baseline that would indicate criminal activity.
Okay.
And then, maybe on there we could put something at the end. If you want to report new
Yeah.
allegations,
Yeah.
tag Ethics
Will you
360.
make a note for that at the end of those notes? Okay, we'll add that. And then I think we also wanted to add that opening paragraph from the earlier draft.
About what those definitions are of those
Yes.
certain behaviors.
So, Dawn,
Okay.
we want to add that opening paragraph from the earlier draft of the survey, too.
And in that earlier draft, right, has a piece that says that you need to
Yes.
you need to speak to somebody, or this is maybe you need additional resources. But also, again, just humbly request that you have to be sure that while we're directing people to Ethics 360, if they have concerns, it needs to be vetted first by DSS and law enforcement before it can become a school's issue. Otherwise, we're still guiding people to the same system that says schools are gonna take care of it.
Right.
We really aren't in the position to take care of it.
Absolutely.
It's law enforcement and DSS's job to take care of that initial overview to say, yes, it meets the criteria for a criminal investigation or a CPS investigation, or it doesn't.
Exactly. I don't think we want the bottom of the survey to suggest they go to ethics if they have something to report.
I
I
think
think they need to
it's
tell somebody immediately that will mandatory report. And I think that the paragraph prior doesn't mention Ethics 360. And also, if you go on to Ethics 360, the very top part says, this is not for immediate action. If you, you need to report to law enforcement. Yeah,
Absolutely.
okay. Just to clarify that.
And I was gonna say, I think like in doing this survey, and we've done pre and post, I think, as agencies in all of these kind of programs that we run, what we find is the more you have these conversations, especially with kids, and you are feeling comfortable having these, that they are gonna understand the system, and they are gonna know, and we're gonna have a better understanding of what they know. So I think that whole survey was designed to know kind of what they do know about the system, but it wasn't about like coming up with those particular things. And the thing that we always kind of come to the end of that is they know more than we understand. They have those kind of things, and it's getting to know who they trust and don't trust. And that's just as important in all of this, is understanding then how do we connect those pieces for them. Often what I think service agencies often know is there's a lot of reasons they don't, and we can't address those things until we get to the core of that, is finding out what those barriers are. So I think it says a lot that you're gonna ask those questions more than anything. And if it wasn't anonymous, I think as someone who's worked with people that have been perpetrated on, they would not,
Right,
open up
that's
in those things
exactly.
anyway. So if you're gonna put it on there, I think that's important to know. But like you said, as long as you have those pieces that say, this is the information and this is how it's being used, and always having those kind of disclaimers at the front, and there's really transparent conversations, I think that's what's important.
And I just want to say this for too, let's not forget too, I know it's been a really rough few weeks for all of us, in the community. It's been a hard conversation to have. But what I've been reiterating is that we, at Carousel Center, you had 500 kids in Tri-County area. May or may not have been related to any of these cases, which means it is not just New Hanover County Schools, it is not just Wilmington, North Carolina, it is not because of us, it is because of perpetrators, and it is important for us to not forget what progress we are making. I think sometimes we can get so overwhelmed and bogged down in, when we create a safer space for people to come forward, we will naturally have more people coming forward. It doesn't mean it's happening more, it means we're doing a better job creating a safe space for that to be aired and for us to do the right thing out of it. So I want to make sure everybody just knows that, because I know it's been rough.
Well, and just to piggyback really quickly on the work that I think this group in general has done, I happen to be at a middle school for something unrelated to this group, and one of the associated principals, whatever they're called, kept saying I looked familiar, and I was like, I have no idea who you are. And she realized she had been to the Stewards of Children Darkness to Light training, and said that how powerful that had been, because it happened to be at Will and Grace, to help with those tools to get through that, and how important that training had been. And so you think about even stuff we had already put in place, and I know Carousel Center, Tiny Jordan have been working really hard, and everyone at this table have been, to kind of roll that out, and how helpful that has been for her as a parent, as well as having gone through that and been in that position. So I think a lot of the stuff we're already putting in place has been really important too. And we have been talking about how important that is. So I think we're putting some of those tools in place very meaningfully now, that are helping even in the aftermath of a lot of that. And I've had parents come up and talk to me, and I keep texting Amy, like, keep up the good work, because the parent forums have been really helpful, even when it doesn't feel like it. I think we don't realize how much they are work we're already putting in place, and the things that we're doing are making a difference, even when we're hearing all of the other things happening. So, it is important that we are kind of getting that information out there, and so that we're going to take all your materials that are left when it's over.
Do not be afraid. I say this to people all the time. It's not that it's happening more, it's that we're doing a better job as a community to address it, and that is a monumental thing. And none of this is one and done. Like, all of these are tools in the toolbox that are going to keep expanding. So it's not like any stewards of children or any, shifting boundaries. None of it is one thing. It's going to have to be a really broad and deep approach for how we're going to do this better in the community.
So back to our survey, given that I think most of us feel like we need to get this out a couple of months ago, I know we want to bring it back to this whole group and then to the board. Can we maybe plan to meet a little sooner, or maybe plan to review this by email and everybody?
That's something I was going to say, because I don't want to wait till the next meeting. So I'll work with Crystal to be able to send that out to the broader Title IX committee to review, so we can get the ball rolling with the survey quicker than we would following the scheduled meetings that we have in person. So yes, I'm completely on board with that. I think
Okay, so you're gonna email us and we can,
As soon as I get it from them, I will make sure that it gets to the broader Title IX committee. And as soon as the Title IX committee has had their chance to review it, I mean, depending on how many comments come back from it, I could slow things down a bit. But you'll have the opportunity to do that sooner than later, put your eyes on it, and then go from there.
perfect.
So, yeah, so,
So just to give like a timeline strategy, like, for the board to review this, to actually give some sort of official stamp to move forward with it, for us to implement it, when would they need to have that to then?
I would say we meet 2 weeks from today. I would say that the board would probably like a full week to go over it, to review it, to discuss it. And then if you wanted it as an action item for the March board meeting, is that what we would prefer?
I feel like we probably want to aim there.
right.
Yes,
And
I think
maybe
so.
put a deadline
I think
for us
that,
to get our
that would,
responses
the
back.
deadline would have to be, you know, it'd be a quick turnaround, it'd be 5 days or so to get your comments to Mr. Lewis, and then we'll make him work all day to send it to us on Tuesday.
You just need to tell us, Mr. Lewis, like, we've got 5 days from the minute you receive
Yeah,
this.
and
If you don't respond, then we're just gonna move right along.
Yes, and so I definitely appreciate everyone's opinion and feedback, but also, this is not a one-time shot. This is a continued process that we're involved in. So every comment, every suggestion might not be implemented, but I definitely appreciate your responses and for taking time to review it.
And Mr. Lewis, if you wanted to send it directly to the board as well, in advance of receiving feedback, you know, at least we can start there as a board. There's no reason to wait to get everything. You can just, you know, throw up the changes or deletions that might or might not arise after we all look at it.
Yeah,
It'd give us more time as a board to look at it and consider it.
okay, good point. Do we have any other hands?
Right, that was-
Okay, so in regards to next step for the education subcommittee, Kristen, I'll get with you to talk about when you all are meeting again, to talk about
It's probably
that.
gonna be early next week.
Okay.
I'll send out a doodle poll.
Okay, so we'll do that. Policy, we'll continue to review these, the policies in our next meetings. And resources subcommittee, we talk about what the plan is. Last couple points, so we were, according to the agenda, supposed to talk about those support pieces in the interim, but because I have been in contact with, I had just gotten feedback from the Title IX survey this morning. I completely flipped this entire agenda. So that's why it's changed, because I wanted to put the survey on there today, now that I knew that it had been vetted from the office there. And so, yeah, I know that it sometimes, in light of piggyback on what Amy said, it might feel like this is a uniquely New Hanover County Schools problem. I think just this morning I saw that, and I don't want to name their name, a prominent nonprofit group is filing for bankruptcy because they're having to pay out for lawsuits for sexual abuse of their children in the nonprofit. So it's definitely a national issue, but we're definitely working. So I appreciate all of your all's help in today's meeting.
I wanted to add one thing. when you're-
Yes, go ahead. I'm done. I was
I
wrapping.
just wanted to remind us that we have a resource up the road in Chapel Hill, Dorothy Espalage, and I wanted to make sure that gets back on the radar. I mean, what I'm thinking is that there's at least three functions she could serve. One would be an educational thing, because she's an international expert, so she could come and do some kind of public presentation. And I know I've talked with Amber at UNCW, and they'd be willing to help coordinate, to help you. And I think it goes along with what you were saying, Amy. This is not a New Hanover County problem. It's not even a United States problem. It is an international problem, and she's an expert, so she could really frame the issue, both in terms of its magnitude, but there are a lot of strides being made in terms of prevention efforts, which means that it could be, for a smaller group, she could help us understand what are the cutting edge, working with school resource officers and programs for kids, and there's a lot of peer-on-peer programs being developed. And she's a researcher who gets millions of dollars of grant money, so it might be that New Hanover County would want to team up with her down the road to do some more extensive work where she could bring in the expertise and the resources, because my guess is that things are pretty tight here, so bringing in some outside resources that's rooted in best work. I mean, and I've talked to her, And I know she's interested, but she's incredibly busy, so we need to get on her radar. So I just wanted to get that back on the,
Yeah, and I think we talked about it at the last meeting. I think maybe you were absent. So I did mention her name. So I anticipate next meeting we'll probably do some more subcommittee work, and that could be a great opportunity for the education subcommittee. Crystal, just want to talk about the next scheduled meeting. So March 16th. I don't think there's any conflicts that I can think of off the top of my head, so.
We have, at 5, we would have the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion meeting in here probably, right, Dr. Smith?
Yes.
On that day. So if it could end probably around this time, it'd probably be fine.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you all. See you all on the 16th, but you'll hear from me before then in light of the survey. All right, thank you.